we studied it in detail. So what are the characteristics or hallmarks of a sexual reproduction? Quickly. So let's just dissect these terms. So when we talk about sexual reproduction, when we talk about sexual reproduction, what are the hallmarks of it? First important thing is fusion of gametes. Remember these things?
Yes, sir.
So if you are going to fuse gametes, then organisms have to make gamete as well. And what other thing is? The thing is variations occur, right? In a sexually reproducing organisms, gametes fuse and variations occur due to meiosis, recombination that happens. Remember? Anything else you specifically remember about sexual reproduction? Basically, two sexes are involved, right? We're not going to say two bodies or two parents, because many a times actually, both the sexes can be present in the same organism or the same body. Okay, so we'll say two sexes are involved, or we can say two different gametes are involved, because sexes produce gametes. Now coming to the part of flowering plants. So what are flowering plants known as? What are the characteristic features of flowering plants? They are also known as angiosperms, right? The word sperms are always related with something like the seed of reproduction. So here the word angiosperm means these are so angio and sperm, these are two things. The word sperm is associated with seed, right? And the word angio is associated with covered. So it simply means that these plants produced covered seeds. You have also studied in class 11 something related to this word. Do you remember that word, people? What are the other kind of plants that produce seeds?
Gymnosperms.
Yes, okay, we have Iram joining in and with an answer. That's great, Iram. How are you doing? Sorry, I missed you joining in. Okay, yes, she's right, gymnosperm. So the word gymno there means naked, and sperms again means seed. So gymnosperms make naked seeds, and angiosperms produce covered seeds. So what are the seeds covered with? Covered within, should I say? What are the characteristic features of angiosperms? So one is they produce flowers. That's why they're called flowering plants. They also produce fruit, right? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
And mostly the seeds are present within this fruit, covered with a seed coat and covered inside the fruit. But there are exceptions. Do you know that there are some fruits where the seed is on the outside of the fruit? Any example?
Strawberry.
Exactly. Strawberry has seeds on the outer surface. If you remember, if you remember seeing a strawberry, there are these small black dots on the top, which are present in minute grooves. Those are basically seeds. And for that reason, strawberry is not considered as a true fruit. So fruits also are categorized biologically as being true fruits and false fruits. So false fruits and true fruits will come back to later, why they are called true and false fruits. But before that, any other feature of flowering plants or angiosperms? So remember that angiosperms are the most abundant type of plants on the planet. Okay, on Earth. And around 70 to 80% of the total plants that are present on the planet are angiosperms, ranging from a small grass to a very huge trees producing seeds and fruits. Okay. Anything else you want to add to this? And just one more thing that's interesting is because flowering plants do sexual reproduction. So because of variations that come along with doing sexual reproduction, allows these plants to have a wide range of adaptations. Okay. So that's why angiosperms are present almost everywhere on the planet where plants can survive. So they show wide range of adaptations. Is that clear about angiosperms and in general about sexual reproduction? Some brushing up. Yes, Parker, you have to say something?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, tell me. Tell me, what are you saying?
No, sir, I was saying yes.
Okay, okay, you're agreeing with me. Thank you. Yeah, so just a brushing up, and the organ which is most fascinating, which is also the sexual organ of angiosperms. What do we call that organ? What are the reproductive organs of angiosperm?
Venusium and androecium.
Sorry?
Venusium and androecium.
Yeah, those are the terms, like they don't explain anything if you don't know what it is. In layman's language, what are the where is the reproductive organ of angiosperm present? In a flower. So flower is nothing but a reproductive organ. Flowers are a very important part. Yes, Parker is saying anther and stigma. You're right, but those are subparts of the flower. I was broadly asking about that structure or the organ that's flower. The tissue is flower. And use flowers. Flowers are very important in every culture to celebrate, to mourn, to show various emotions of happiness, grief, everything. Flower is used in every culture. But what we have to understand is that flowers are amazing structures in evolution, and we will be talking about plant evolution in chapter 7. That's why understanding plant and its reproduction first is very important. So flower as a tissue of the plant, where does it comes from? What is the origin? Anyone knows? What basically, from where does flower originate? What part it is? So if you remember parts of a plant, what all parts do plants have? They have a root, and broadly they have a shoot, and inside the shoot they have stem, branches, leaves, buds, right? And flowers. So which part do you think flowers evolved from?
Bud.
Sorry?
Bud.
Bud. Yeah. But if you see a bud, even bud comes out from something. So flower is evolutionarily, oh, someone wrote an answer. Parker says stem. Unfortunately, it's not stem, Parker. It is, just 1 second. It is leaf. So flower is a modified leaf in origin. Okay. So flower is a modified leaf in origin. And if we draw a, let's draw a flower, any generalized flower. Flowers are of two types. Yes, Iram.
So flower is originating from the tip of the stem, right?
Tip of the stem. They originate on the nodes on a branch. You're right, but they are not stem tissues. So just like branches originate on stem, and then on the branches originate these nodes where leaves are. Similarly, there is a node where flowers can be. So in evolution, flowers has originated from leaf tissues only. After you can even feel it with some plants. Have you seen, how many of you have seen bougainvillea, the flowers of bougainvillea? Anyone has seen the flowers of bougainvillea? These are like mostly, yeah, they mostly come in reddish or pinkish color, and white is also there. On the same plant, you will also find sometimes white and pink both. So if you go and see the petals, the flower itself, you will realize that it's very much like a colored leaf itself, right? You can also see the venations inside it, if you have paid attention to that. Yeah. So what was your question, Iram? What was your question? You're right. You're right that flowers rise on stem and branches. So what was the question again? Sorry, I interrupted you. Sorry, come again.
Sorry, sir. I said that flowers originate from the tip of the stem.
Right. So you wanted to ask for a clarification why I'm calling it a modified leaf and not a modified stem?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So we call it a modified leaf because stem tissues, if you have, I think you have studied the anatomy of flowering plants in class 11th, right? Anatomy and morphology, was that part there or was it deleted? It was there, right?
It was there.
Yeah. So if you see the anatomy of a stem or the branch, the kind of tissues that it has and the kind of tissues that a leaf has are very different, right? And if you go and look at the kind of cells and tissues that flowers contain, it correlates more with the leaf and not with the stem. That's how we derive that it comes from a leaf and not from stem. It's not a modified stem. For example, we know that many structures which look like fruit are basically not fruit. For example, if we talk about potato, for that matter, potato looks like a fruit of a plant, right? Like if I ask you, what do you think potato is? You will say that it might be the fruit of the potato plant, but it's not. It is actually a stem that has modified in its function and have specialized to store starch in the cells, like store food basically. So just because it's storing food and starch doesn't make it a fruit. We go to the origin of tissues. What kind of tissues are present in that structure? Do you understand that? You know?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So flower is, just remember this question often, like I've seen it a couple of times in entrances, that flower is a modified kind of leaf, stem, branch, something will be the option. So it is the leaf. Now, if I draw a flower, so flowers are of two types. One is a monosexual flower and another is a bisexual flower. So the word bi means two, sexual means when both the sex organs are present in the same flower, they're called bisexual flowers. Okay. So if I'm drawing a structure of a bisexual flower, so you people already answered about the specific reproductive organs, the name of specific reproductive organs in the flower. So you see that the male part is called, what is called? stamen,
Androecium.
right? Yeah, like androecium is another scientific term. We also call it stamen, right? I'll come to androecium and gynoecium. It's the word gyne is always associated with female organs. The word andro is associated with male. Like androgens you have studied in humans. We are just drawing parallels, so things becomes easy. And gynecologist, you know, is a specialist doctor who deals with female reproductive system and diseases or complications associated with that. So, and stamen is the name that we give to the male reproductive part of the flower, and it has two parts, anther and filament. What do we call the female reproductive part? Gynoecium or
Pistil.
pistil. We also call it carpel. Some books also write carpel. Pistil is the same thing, and it has three parts. Anyone remembers that those parts?
Stigma, style, and ovary.
Stigma, style, and ovary. That's correct. So let's try to draw a bisexual flower. So what I'm drawing here is stigma is like a flat surface, which is followed by a long structure called style. And as it goes down, it gets swollen and forms the ovary. So this is the female reproductive part, and it arises from a structure which is basically like a and from here rise structures like this. Can anyone tell me what I'm drawing? This is the male reproductive organ, and we call it stamen. Okay. And then plants also have the leaf-like structure at the base, which are green. Basically, this was the bud when it was closed and not, the flower was not out. What do we call this structure that I'm drawing here? If I draw it with green, it will be more helpful.
Sepals.
Sorry?
Sepals.
Sepals, correct. This greenish part is sepals. And let's draw two of each kind. These are sepals. And then we have the outermost part, which I always draw very bad, but let me, okay, cool. Let me try. What is this that I'm drawing?
Petal.
Yes. Okay, so I'll just give it a give it a very slight tinge. Let's say, yes. This part is petal, right? Perfect. Not the best of the flower that you might have seen or drawn yourself, but I think it will serve the purpose. Okay, so let's come back to, second, I'll have to use many colors in today's class. Let's come back to this part. So this part that you see here, which I'm just highlighting in dark color, is the female reproductive system, right? This is the innermost layer. So the whole flower can be divided into 4 layers, okay? So the first layer is known as pistil, or we call it carpel. Okay, so pistil and carpel, I should not write it as pistil and carpel here. Let me do one thing. Let's first write their subparts. So the top region, this region, so this top region is called stigma. This narrow region is called style. And this swollen region is called ovary, right? And these three together form a pistil, or you can call it a carpel. In general, this is what contains the gynoecium, the tissue. And then we have these structures here, which I'm marking with red. Right? This is the yes, perfect. So this here, the top part is called anther. Anther is the part which contains pollen grains in it. Okay. Anther. Yes, you're right, Parker. That's anther, and this part which supports the anther is called a filament. Now, the role of filament is important because how and why it is important, we'll come back to it when we'll go further in the chapter. On the basis of the length of anther, it is also decided whether this flower is going to prefer one type of pollination or the other type of pollination strategy. So we'll come back to it later. But just remember that anther and filament together makes, they're called stamen. Okay. So the first layer, which is the innermost layer of the flower, is the pistil or carpel. So I'll put it as number 1. And the second layer, which is around it, is stamen. So stamens are around it. Then the third layer is this colored part, which is called petals. Anyone knows another name that is given to petals? Petals are also called as corolla. Okay, petals or corolla. So this is the third layer. And these sepals, inside which the whole thing is packed when it is a bud. So when it's a bud, you can only see it as green, right? And that green thing that you see is basically sepals. So they are called sepals, or what is the other name?
Calyx.
Calyx. So these names are kind of important to remember, but instead of mugging it up, just try to understand how a flower is structured basically. 4 layers, innermost whole, they are called layers, or in book they are called whorls. This is how it is written, WHORLS, whorls. So there are 4 layers or 4 whorls of a bisexual flower. If it is a monosexual flower, you will either have just the pistil, or you will just have the stamen. Okay, so in that case, it becomes either a male flower or a female flower. Okay, so this what we have drawn here is the reference of a bisexual flower. Is that clear, everyone?
Yes.
And yeah, and then this part, let me use a slightly darker shade here. This part that you see, what do you think this part is? So the tissue which is around the flower, what is this tissue?
Thalamus.
Sorry, anyone?
Thalamus.
Thalamus. So right beneath the ovary, the tissue on which basically ovary rests is also a little swollen, and it's called thalamus. Remember that this tissue is important because I was telling you about fruits, right? There are false fruits and true fruits. So basically, a true fruit is nothing but a ripened ovary. Okay. Is that clear? So inside the ovary, there is a chamber which is known as the embryo sac. And in that chamber, you will have ovules. Okay. So ovary has, sorry, it's very, these are called ovules. So ovules are basically future seed, and ovary is future fruit. So the walls of the ovary ripens, gets fleshy, juicy, and pulpy, that we call as the pulp of the fruit. And if the ovary is ripened and not any other structure and ovules are present inside it as seeds, we call it a true fruit. But if the ovary is not ripened and anything else has ripened, for example, in case of apple, you know, apple is also a false fruit. Many of good fruits are actually, I realize that they are false fruits. Apple, strawberry, any other fruit you know is a good fruit, but might be one of your favorites, but is a false fruit. Pineapple is also a false fruit. Okay. So in case of apple, guava, says Parker. Is guava a false fruit, people? How many of you think guava is a false fruit? Okay, let's go to Parker. Parker, why do you think guava is a false fruit? Can you give us some rationale behind it? Why do you think guava is a false fruit? Can you speak up, Parker? Like, can you participate in the discussion? Like, this chapter otherwise becomes very fact burdened with facts. Okay. Okay, Parker says because it doesn't ripen enough. I think that has more to do with the stores that sell it, the fruit sellers that sell it, rather than if you allow guava to ripen, it will ripen. It will become fully ripened and yellow, and then it will become over ripened and even what do you call it? Rot. It can rot also. Mariam says cucumber and pear. These two are also false fruits. Okay. First, let's come to guava. Is guava a false fruit? Iram, what's your opinion?
About that.
So is guava a false fruit? Like Parker says, guava is a false fruit.
I don't know.
Yeah. So guava is actually somewhere on the middle ground of being a false and a true fruit. So guava is a little complicated fruit. Guava has ovary also ripened, but along with the ovary, the thalamus also gets ripened. So guava is an infusion fruit of thalamus and ovary, like the inferior part of the lower part of the ovary and the thalamus. So that's why books often consider it under false fruit category. It's not completely a true fruit. What about cucumber? So you're right, Parker. You can call it a false fruit, but not because it doesn't ripen, because the ripened part is not completely and solely the ovary. Okay, it does ripen, but thalamus part, which you see just below the ovary, also ripens. And that's also the part that we eat in guava. What about cucumber? And by the way, guava comes under the category of a berry fruit, which is infusion fruit. So what about cucumber? Is cucumber a false fruit?
Yes.
Yes, cucumber solely develops from thalamus, so it is a false fruit. And how many of you have cut cucumber in half, like just from the center into two halves?
Yes.
Anyone has cut cucumber?
Yeah.
Yes, Parker has cut cucumber in half. Yeah, so if you will cut cucumber, you will see. Okay, no, this is right. So if this is a long cucumber, and if you cut it in half, you will see that each half now looks something like this. It has something in the middle, right? And that's where the seeds are lined up, correct? And you can actually take it out from the middle of cucumber. Do you agree what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So that part that you can just take out is the ovary with the ovules. But the part that you eat in salads is basically the thalamus. So cucumber is a false fruit, and so is pear. Pear is also a false fruit. Apple, pear, cucumber, jackfruit, pineapple, strawberry is false fruit. How about banana? What is banana?
False.
It is true or false?
False.
It is also a false fruit. Yes. Someone is asking something. What about tomato? Who says this? Parker. Parker says, what about tomato? What about tomato, Parker? What do you think? Is tomato a false fruit? First of all, is tomato a fruit?
Yes, sir.
Why? Don't we call it vegetable?
Yes, sir. Actually, there are many arguments about it. And many people say it's a fruit, and many people say it's a vegetable.
Because you can also eat it raw. So one of the things that people say fruit is anything that you can eat raw. Vegetables needs to be cooked. But those are not biological arguments. Biologically, there is no such thing as a vegetable. We call certain things as fruits and certain things as vegetable. Biologically, every vegetable is a fruit. Either it's a fruit or something else, some part of a plant. But if it is a ripened ovary, it is a fruit. Okay. For example, brinjal is a fruit of the plant, brinjal plant. We call it vegetable. So first argument, vegetable and fruits are not they're not biologically differentiated. They're just differentiated for the convenience of society, right? So tomato, we'll consider it a fruit. So is tomato a true fruit or a false fruit? So tomato is also a false fruit, okay? Because again, in tomato has multiple ovules. And also, if you see, there are chambers in tomato. It has multiple of these, what did I call these chambers inside ovaries? Ovule sac, okay? So there are multiple chambers in tomato, and the part that is ripened also includes thalamus. So tomato is also a false fruit. Mariam says false fruits include seedless fruits, but apple and pear have seed, right? Yes, you're right. First of all, don't go with this understanding that false fruit will all be seedless. Okay, false fruit, not all false fruits are seedless. Tomato is one example. Tomato has a lot of seeds, and it's a false fruit. So is strawberry. Strawberry has seeds on the outer side in a groove, and you can actually take those seeds out and grow strawberry plant out of it. So again, a seeded fruit, which is a false fruit. Okay. Same is true for apple and pear. Apple and pear do have seeds, but that does not qualify them to be called a true fruit. Remember, just write it down. A true fruit is only produced from a ripened ovary. So it should be the walls of the ovary that we are eating that should be ripened. Write down true fruits only is only produced from ripened ovary and no other tissue is involved. And no other tissue is involved. For the ripening pulpy part, okay? In case of pear and apple, the seeds come from ovules, that's true. But the thing that we eat, the fruit, the fleshy part, is not solely ovary. That's why they are called false fruit. Mariam, does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So with this understanding, now remember that below the thalamus, as you go down, the part where it is attached to the base is called peduncle. Okay. So either thalamus is involved, peduncle is involved, or any other part of the ovary is involved. Sorry, any other part apart from ovary is involved. That fruit will be called a false fruit. Now let's come back to the 4 layers of the flower itself. Talking about the outermost layer, which is sepal and calyx, they are green because they have chlorophyll in them, and they function. They're just like leaves. They are very much like leaf. And that is the first evidence that the whole flower is a modified leaf because it comes out of leaf. So it's like leaves open in the form of bud and there comes a flower out of it. Sepals and calyx can photosynthesize because they are green, they have chlorophyll. In fact, they do photosynthesize throughout till they are there. Now, the function of a flower is to carry out pollination, right? The union of sperm nucleus and the ovule nucleus should happen. And once that happens in the ovary, sexual reproduction is done and ovary starts to ripen. And that is the point where you do not need any longer the sepals. Sepals were there in the initial time for the protection of the bud because they were enclosing the bud. There are many flowers that open during the day and close during the night, or open during the night and close during the day. Do you know about any such flower? Do you know about the story of Thumbelina? Thumbelina used to sleep in one such flower, if I'm not wrong. The Disney stories. It used to open in the day and then close. So when the flower opens and closes, it's the sepal that protects when it's closing. And also when it's in the bud stage, it's the sepal that protects the structure. But so sepal is the outermost layer, mostly important for protection and attachment, helps in the attachment of petals. Is that clear, everyone? Yeah.
Yes.
Now coming to the second last layer, the third layer, which is the second layer from outside, third layer from inside, petals. Now, what is the function of petals? Petals are the colorful part of the flower. So not all flowers are colorful. Do you see white flowers also? Some flowers do not have vibrant colors. They're just white or colorless, or they also look dull. So how do you think, why do you think their petals are not colored? Just think logically. Flowers that have vibrant colors in their petals, they must be producing pigments to give their petals that color. And producing pigment is a protein. It is very, very energy taking a process. You just have studied transcription and translation. So to produce any protein, you have to do a lot of thing in the cell. So why do you think a plant will invest so much energy to make pigments, put it in the petals and make its petal colorful and bright? Any idea? Clearly, it's not doing it for humans so that one day humans will pick their favorite flowers and will take the flowers from the plant and offer it to their beloved ones. That's not the motive why plants produce flowers.
Pollination.
Yes?
To
Yes, Alia. To attract what?
insects for
To
pollination.
attract, yes, to attract insects. So this can give you one fair idea. If you see any plant which have very vibrant flowers, very vibrant, colorful flowers, you can with a lot of surety say that, okay, this plant is pollinated by insects. That's why this plant is investing so much of energy in making colorful flowers so that insects are attracted to it. Insects are attracted to colors, okay, bright colors. But what the flower has to offer to insects? Why should they come seeing color? What happens when the insect comes? Sorry, yes, tell me.
Nectar.
Nectar, right? Yes, so it produces nectar, and insect tries to reach out for that nectar. And when it is reaching out for that nectar, what is the plant doing then?
Pollen grains stick on their body.
Perfect. So you people know science already. Let's just piece it together. So now, if you see a plant that has very colorful petals and also produces nectar, can you say with some surety that this flower will for sure have stamen inside it? Right? Yes or no? Because if there is stamen, then only there will be pollen grains. The insect will come, try to reach out for the nectar. And while doing that, pollens will stick to its body, right? Perfect. Now, what about flowers that do not have colorful petals? There are flowers that do not have colorful petals. They're just white. That's not a vibrant color.
Odor.
What happens to, sorry?
Smell, odor of the flowers.
Perfect. So those plants produce scent. So if a plant does not have colors to attract the insect, the other thing it can use to attract insects is the scent. Okay. So Parker is saying air pollination. That is also possible. What Parker is saying is also correct. But if a flower does not have colorful petals and also does not have a scent, then you can say that, okay, this gets pollinated through air. When air blows, pollen ends up landing on the stigma. But if it has scent, it is still attracting insects, not by the color, but by the scent. They again come, try to reach for nectar, and in that process, pollen stick to their body. Okay. So petals, write down, petals are important structures for attracting pollinators. Okay. Petals have vibrant, petals can be of vibrant color in plants, or the flower, or they can have scent. They can produce scent, good smelling odor to attract insects. It also depends on what are you attracting. Different flowers have different kind of odor that they release. Because when you study it in NCERT and books in primary level, you just think that all flowers are good smelling. Actually, that's not true. There are a bunch of flowers that smell very awful. You would not like to smell those flowers at all. How many of you know about which is the biggest flower on planet Earth? What is the biggest flower? No, biggest flower. Sunflower. No, that's not sunflower is very tiny in front of the biggest flower. Anyone else? I'm getting a couple of more answers. Yes, Alia and Mariam together says Rafflesia. That's correct. Rafflesia is the biggest flower on the planet. And it's also the heaviest. It's very heavy. And it's so big that it no longer attracts insects. It's very big, it's huge. It could be as huge as a small study table, okay? So Rafflesia attracts reptiles, including snakes. And to attract them as pollinators, or even sometimes some birds or flying mammals. And Rafflesia smells like a rotting flesh, rotting meat. It smells awful. It smells very bad. But that helps it to attract the kind of pollinators it wants to attract. Okay, so it's not like all flowers are good, sweet, smelling. Just know this fact, okay? Perfect. Now, after petals, we have, so one more thing. Now, petal, because its job also is in the first half where it has to attract pollinators. Once pollinators have come and sexual reproduction has happened, do the plant need petals anymore? No, it does not, right? So petals also shed off after reproduction is completed. Then we come to the third layer. In a bisexual flower, there'll be two things present, pistil and stamen. So stamen is the third layer from outside, second from inside. And its job is to produce pollen grains and store it inside these structures called anther. Now, let me tell you something more about anther. So before we go into the details, let's divide the whole series of events into three parts. So from beginning, there is a region, there is a time till which fertilization has not happened. So we call it pre-fertilization events. Then once this is over, we have event called fertilization itself. So this process is also very complicated in plants, and we will try to understand it with some fair ease. And then after that, we have a post-fertilization event in a flower's life. So in pre-fertilization events, what all things come is first is structure development. The most important thing is structure development. So development of all the structures that we have just studied happens in the pre-fertilization. So the development of flower, it producing scent, or it producing pollen grains, it producing nectar, etc. Everything, it attracting the pollinators, all comes under pre-fertilization. So structure development, attracting pollinators, and the process of pollination. Okay. And then comes the fertilization. Once pollination is over, then in fertilization part, we have formation of pollen tube and fusion of male and female nucleus. Okay. And then in the post-fertilization part, there is shedding of petals and sepals, and ripening of ovary. You can also call it fruit formation. So I'm not writing it here, but remember that it can also be ripening of thalamus, which will be a false fruit formation. but we are just going by the books. And also formation of seeds, right? These three things. So is the timeline clear to all of you?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, now let's start with the first event, which is pre-fertilization. Any doubts so far? Okay, Parker says, what about plants who feed on insects? How do they pollinate? That's a very good question, Parker. So what basically she's talking about is carnivorous plants like a pitcher plant or the sundew trap plant, right? Parker, is that what you're talking about?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So the thing is, in these plants, the process of sexual reproduction is separate from the process of they killing, trapping, and eating insects. So they might be, fertilizing, or they might be getting pollinated either through air, wind, so which is air and wind is same, water, or even insects. But their flower structure is separate. The structure that they use to trap insects is also mostly a modified leaf. Like in a pitcher plant, if you have seen a pitcher plant, the pitcher that the plant has, basically it is a leaf and then another leaf that's modified like this. And inside here are digestive enzymes. So this leaf can open as a flap, and once the insects fall in, it gets digested in that soup, and then everything is absorbed by the tissues of the wall of the pitcher. Why do pitcher plant kill insects, or why do sundew is also like a leaf that's open like this, which have bristles at the edge. And then there are small sensory bristles here. They're exactly 3 or 5 in number. If an insect lands up here and tries to move around, it will touch some of these sensory bristles. And it's not like just a single touch will close it, because a single touch could just be a false signal also. Maybe some dust particle fell, and the plant will not like to waste its trap. So it first makes sure it's an insect. How to make sure it's an insect and not a dust particle or something? If it is an insect, it will do a series of movements. It will not just touch one bristle and stop. If an insect is so intelligent that it touches one bristle and stops, the trap will not close. So it touches one, then it touches next and the next, and there the plant knows, oh, it's not something random, a dust particle, it is really something living that is moving, so close. So here also it starts secreting enzyme and degrades the insect. Basically, these plants kill insects or animals to get nitrogen from their body, okay? Because these plants grow in regions or the soil which is nitrogen deficient. So it is an evolutionary adaptation that these plants have undergone to become carnivorous, where they kill insects and animals and derive nitrogen from their body. Is it clear, Parker?
Yes, sir.
So they can still get pollinated if they are getting pollinated through normal means. But this particular part of trapping and killing insects is separate. Okay. It happens through a separate structure and it happens for a separate reason. Okay. They don't kill the insects that come to their flowers for that matter. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. Cool. So let's go to pre-fertilization events. Pen not working. Okay. Okay. So in the pre-fertilization event, the first thing is, so write down few points. In this phase, the development of floral tissue itself or the flower itself. In this phase, the development of flower takes place. And how does a plant decide or conveys to the other parts of the plant that a flower has to be made and where it has to be made? You have already studied about how living systems can coordinate within their tissues in class 11. There are two kinds of coordination possible in living systems. Can you tell me? These were the names of a chapter in class 11. Do you remember the chapter Neural Control and Coordination, people? Yes, no?
Yes, sir.
So what is neural control and coordination? What does it mean? Come on, give me the answer. What does neural control and coordination mean? Do you have neural control and coordination in your body?
Yes.
What does it mean? How do I believe that there is? Just saying yes does not justify your statement. What do you mean by I have neural control and coordination in my body? Come on, discuss, people,
Because we
speak
have
up.
a brain.
Again, does not justify the statement. These two are independent statement of each other. We have a liver also. Why did you choose brain and not liver? We have a heart also. I'm asking, justify the statement that you have a neural control and coordination in your body. Parker, would you like to speak up? Mariam says it regulates the systems of the body. Again, does not explain anything. For that matter, I can say that it regulates the system. We don't know what do you mean by regulate, which system of the body. Give me some specific points. Come on. People, you have to speak up. You have studied this in 11th class. If you don't take risk of being wrong, you will not learn new things. Mariam says to ensure proper coordination and efficient functioning of an organism. A little more detailed, but still, can you give some example? What do you mean by ensure proper coordination? What coordination? Efficient functioning of an organism. These are very, very, I call them as carpet terms. Put everything under the carpet and cover it. And just say, oh, this is the carpet. But what's lying inside, no one understands. These statements are good to write answers in board exams because you can make answers lengthy. If it's a 5-marker, you don't know what to say. Just keep saying these things to ensure proper coordination and efficient functioning of an organism for better survival in its environment. Wow. But what does it mean? What do you mean when you say this? Can you give me a very pinpointed, specific example which justifies and proves that you have a neural control and coordination in your body?
So reflex action.
A reflex action. Can you control reflex action? Then how is it an example of a control and coordination? I think the whole point of a reflex action was that it's reflex. It cannot be controlled.
Like,
right?
Like we are speaking right now, so our mind is
Yes.
controlling it. So it's coordinating.
For that matters, computers also speak,
Okay.
don't they? Your mobile phone speaks to you. You can just put it on a speak mode. It will speak everything that is on the screen. Audiobooks read the book on the screen for you.
I mean, like
That's-
for this instance, like right now.
Uh-huh. You're going to the right point, Alia. Just go on. Don't hesitate. I'm just trying to be that very, very, cruel coach who's being harsh on you so that you prepare well. That's all. Any of this, what you have written in chats, all of you, if you write it in exams, you'll get marks. So don't worry about marks. Marks are not the point here. I'm sure that you all are good at remembering things if you have decided to become doctors. Okay. The thing is, do you understand what's happening? What are you saying? Yes, Alia. So Alia says speaking. Can you use any other example in the body which is more direct and specific? You are right with speech as well. But anything else which shows control and coordination? Yes, nervous system. Yes. Yes, go on.
Sense.
Strength.
Sense.
Sense. Okay, what sense? Doesn't make any sense to me.
The ability to feel.
The ability to feel, perfect. So how does it prove that you have a neural control and coordination? Simple. When someone touches you, right, you feel, even if your eyes are closed, you can tell where your body is being touched. You can also to some extent tell the object which is touching you, is it another living system or is it a non-living metal or what it is to a greater extent, right? In cases, how it proves that you have a neural control and coordination is in cases where this system does not work, people cannot feel anything. Their limbs are paralyzed. If you keep touching it, they will not feel anything. So when someone touches you, there are sensory neurons, touch receptors everywhere on your body that senses it and sends a signal to your brain. In case of a paralyzed person, the hand is intact or the leg is intact. What is not functioning is this sensory mechanism. So you can keep touching that person. You're doing the same thing. Everything is present in the arm. It's not like receptors are missing. Receptors are also there, but they're not functioning to send the signal to the brain. So they're not connected to brain. So it's like a loose wire out of the plug. So it does not matter how much you switch on, switch off, nothing will light up because the connection is gone. So neurons help in control and coordination by allowing us to control each and every part of our body at will. Not each and every part, but whatever it allows. So it could be voluntary or involuntary. So the movement of our limbs, you can ask me and I can decide to whether turn it towards right or left. That's called neural control and coordination. So that's one example. You could say that we could lift a pen and note down because we have a neural control and coordination in our body. Okay. Is it clear, everyone?
Yes, sir.
That is one way to say that control and coordination can happen in the body. So my brain can tell my finger to lift the pen. So from here to here, a message went through something, and that something is neurons. But do plants have neurons?
No, sir.
No. So how are they going to coordinate among different parts? What was the other chapter? The other way to control and coordinate things? Send message from one part to another. Something that both plants and animals have. Through stem. Okay. Do animals have stem? You can say that my body is a stem. Okay. And from my stem comes the branches. Just like Groot. We all are animal versions of Groot. If any one of you do not know Groot, it's a fictional character from Marvel comics. It's a tree that's humanoid. So you can say that a human is like a tree. But again, you say through stem, does not explain anything. Through stem what? What is in the stem? It does not have neurons. So how is the message traveling is my question.
Maybe cells. Cells?
Maybe cells. Cells, right? So, but do cells move from one place to another to send the message? Like a cell from my brain moves all the way down to my liver to tell, okay, this is the message. No, right?
There can be lots of cells and can be like.
So what can the cells do then?
Like they take a message and then they transfer to another and then keep goes on.
Right,
Like
perfect. Perfect. So that's where you are leading to, and that's great. So in this, what Alia has come up with is a hypothesis. It's a very beautiful hypothesis and also happened to be partially correct the answer. So in Alia's hypothesis, cells can just transfer message to each other, right? So the message itself is not cell, right? Cells are not moving. They are moving something through them to reach from one part of the body to another part of the body. Correct, Alia? Alia, are you there?
sorry.
So I'm just elaborating your example. You are saying that one way to do it is that cells do not move themselves, but they pass on something as a message from one to another. And finally, the message reaches from one part of the body to another part of the body. Correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'm going to trap you in your own hypothesis then. Well done. You have dug a big hole for yourself. Let's see if you fall in it or not. That's what my job is. So in this hypothesis, there has to be some cell producing that message and some cells who at the very end are receiving those messages, right?
Yes, sir.
So what are those messages? What is that message which is being passed from cell to cell? Let me tell you, Mariam has already given an answer, but she's not speaking. So if she does not speak, I will allow. Yes, Mariam, she speaks. Yes. What did you write? Plant hormones, he said. And that's correct answer. So you have studied a chapter in class 11th called hormonal regulation, hormonal coordination, right? Where you studied about plant hormones, auxins, gibberellins, cytokinins. Yes or no? Ethylene.
Yes, sir.
Exactly. So if you do not have nervous system, long wires and cables throughout your body to send message, send it through hormones, right? In humans, we have both. We have a hormonal regulation, we have a neural regulation. In plants, there is no neurons, but they do have hormonal regulations. So to produce a flower, to produce any structure, to make a fruit ripened, to do any other thing in a repair in the plant tissue, plants use hormones. So several plant hormones can bring structural changes and initiate the formation of something or degeneration of something. Okay. So write down. Iram also gave the right answer. That's correct. Write down. The decision to make a flower, is initiated by several plant hormones. several plant hormones that leads to development of first thing, that leads to development of floral primordium. This is the term, floral primordium. So floral primordium is a tissue, a group of tissues that are initiators of a flower. So if you notice any flowering plant, okay? When you germinate any plant, any flowering plant, the first thing that comes out is a shoot and a root, correct? The shoot starts growing, the root starts growing, the shoot gives rise to first leaves. So branches come, leaves come, it grows in size. At the very end comes the flower, correct? In a seedling, there is no flower. Flowers only come after a particular time when the plant is all developed and ready to undergo sexual reproduction. Yes or no?
Yes.
Yeah. So when flowers have to start forming and when that tissue has to start forming, this information is regulated by plant hormones. And the first thing that develops is this floral primordium. Primordium means a precursor of flower itself, okay? Now write down. This floral primordium give rise to floral buds, okay? And these floral buds become flowers. Is that clear, everyone? Yes, no, any doubts? Okay, so flowers have two kind of tissues, androecium and gynoecium. The tissue androecium develops to form stamen, or it gives rise to stamen, both anther and filament. And gynoecium develops to give rise to pistil. Now, everyone understands the flow of these terms now? People, yes, no, give me some hints, thumbs up, anything. Okay, perfect. Right, so first we'll talk about the male part, which is stamen. So what comes from androecium, okay? So let me make it here. So the stamen, which is the male reproductive part. So in the stamen, there are two things, as I said, anther and filament. So anther is the, what do you call it? Lobed structure. So it can be, generally it is bilobed. It can be unilobed also. Like lobed means how many? So remember I made anther like this, right? There are two lobes and then stamen filament comes out of it. So this kind of anther, these are called lobes. So anther mostly is bilobed. Bi means two. They have two lobes. In each lobe, let me draw the structure more clearly here. So this is how an anther looks, and then filaments comes out of it. These are lobes, and in each lobe, there are structures present here which are called theca. So each lobe, so this is called theca. Theca is where pollen grains are formed and stored. So there are two thecas. So each lobe is diathecous. Each lobe is diathecous. Okay. So if there are two lobes, how many total theca will be there in a anther?
4.
4. So in a bilobed anther, there are 4 theca. Okay. Each lobe is diathecous. So this kind of a stamen is called bilobed and diathecous. Okay. Then we have filament. Filament is the long stalk-like structure. Okay. So this is this part is your anther and this part is your filament. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Now, where does this proximal, I mean the end part of the filament goes? So write down the end of the filament is attached to, it can be attached to two things. In some flowers, it is attached to the thalamus. What I have drawn here. You see, it is going all the way down where the thalamus is, and it is attached to thalamus. So either these filaments can be attached to thalamus, or they can just fuse with petals. Okay, but they will never be attached to sepals. Okay, or they will not be fusing in the ovary. Just remember, either they will go and attach to thalamus, or they will infuse with the petals. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Now talking about the number, so numbers differ. How many total stamens will be there in a flower? That is different. And on the basis of which at the end of this, no, not this chapter, I always forget. In morphology of flowering plants, you have studied about floral formula. Remember floral formula, people?
Yes.
This is today's homework of yours. So you have to go and you have to open your 11th NCRT and you have to revise floral formula. Okay, just note it down. This is important. So when we write down floral formula, we write how many sepals, petals are there, how are they attached to each other, how are they arranged. We also write how many stamens are there and how many ovaries are there and their numbers and how are they arranged, right? So it can vary. Yeah, yes, you're saying something? Anyone is saying something? No? Okay. Now, as I told you that these anthers are bilobed and they contain theca. And if you see this structure under a microscope, you will realize that it has small structures, tetragonal structures inside it, which are called sporangia. So inside each theca, write down, is present sporangia. And sporangia is the sporangia that is present here is called microsporangia. Why it is called microsporangia? The word micro is always associated with male gametes, whether it's animal or whether it's plants. So we called sperm as the microgamete and ovum as the macrogamete. In plants, we call pollen as the microspores and ovules as the macrospores. And the tissue from which they are formed in in plants are called microsporangia if it is producing pollens, and macrosporangia if it is producing ovules. Is it clear, everyone?
Yes.
Yes.
And the microsporangia which is present in theca, they have a shape called tetragonal shape. I don't know if it's very, very important for you to, I've not seen a question on this, but is my voice cracking for everyone? Mariam says my voice is, Parker says my voice is cracking. Is it cracking for others as well?
No, sir.
Yes or no?
No.
No. Okay. Then I think Parker, it's your network. Sorry. Can you hear me now clearly, Parker? Do you want me to repeat something?
Yes, sir. I can hear you.
Okay. Okay, cool. So I'll just repeat the last part what I said. I said that the word micro is associated with male gametes or male spores in plants. So we call it microsporangia because it produces pollen grains. And we call something as macrosporangia because it produces ovules, right? The female part. So microsporangia is located at the corners, okay, where this theca is, in the theca. So that's why theca produces pollen grains and also stores pollen grains, okay? So you can write down the microsporangia develops to become pollen sac, bag full of pollens, okay? So if you will see, there will be multiple bags in each anther filled with pollens, okay? That's why anthers are like lobe structures. And how to get those pollen out from anther? Any idea? How to get it out?
Dehiscence?
Exactly. Just burst the anther. Make the anther swollen, swollen, swollen. These pollens are there and then woof, and all the pollens go out in the air. That's what you want to achieve. So dehiscence, it is called dehiscence or breaking of the wall, and these pollens just get spread in the air or get attached. So when an insect comes, tries to go inside the flower looking for nectar, it brushes past these anthers, and these anthers have this theca. Within the theca are present the microsporangia. Microsporangia is developed. It has formed pollens. It's present inside a bag called pollen sac. The moment the insect brushes past the anther, this is a signal for the flower to burst its anther if it is ready. So the wall of the anther bursts and pollens comes out and stick to insect's body. Then the insect will have the nectar, fly from that flower and go to another flower, and when it will be doing the same thing, it will also brush past through the stigma and style, and it will deposit some of these pollens on the stigma of another flower. Do you understand how pollination happens now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, now write down this microsporangium. So microsporangia is plural. The singular is sporangium. So write down this microsporangium has 4 layers. So 4 layers. The wall is 4-layer thick. Now we're talking about microanatomy. Within that very tiny structure, there are 4 layers. Okay, it's very, very well evolved. The outermost layer is always known as epidermis. Okay, that is just there for protection. So the outermost is epidermis. Okay, so what I'm talking about is structure of microsporangium. So it has 4 layers. The outermost layer is epidermis, and it's for protection, just like our skin. Then the layer beneath it is called endothecium. It is still a covering layer only, but it covers the pollen sac. So endothecium. Then between endothecium and the fourth layer, which is the most important layer called tapetum. Tapetum, questions comes on this layer, tapetum. So between endothecium and tapetum, forget epidermis, it is just there for covering. Then important thing starts from endothecium. This is also covering, but it secretes also. Between endothecium and tapetum, you have layers called middle layers. So they don't have, you can call them mesolayers or middle layers. They are not very, very important here. But what's important is the innermost wall called tapetum. This is in direct contact with pollen grains. Okay, so write down tapetum is the most important layer because it is the innermost layer and it nourishes the pollen grains. It provides nourishment to the developing pollen grains. Do you remember how sperms were formed? Can you tell me any analogy? What kind of cell tapetum are like in a human testes? People, what gives nutrition to the sperms when they are forming? Sorry? Is anyone saying something? Okay, so if you are not giving me this answer, I'm giving this as a homework. You have to figure out tapetum. The function of tapetum is to provide nourishment to pollen grains, developing pollen grains. And for that reason, tapetum have dense cytoplasm and they are multinucleated. Write down. Tapetum has dense cytoplasm because the cytoplasm is full of proteins and they are multinucleated. In the human testes, what kind of cells are like tapetum? Is your question for homework. No, Mariam, that's not the right answer. In fact, the answer that you have given, Mariam, that tissue is not in testes at all. Okay, that's an entirely different thing. One thing that I don't want you people to do is to keep learning new things and forgetting the old things. It's not like, don't make your brain as a pen drive. Every day you are formatting to put more things in. You have to put it in your head like a story. Connect dots. Tapetum does what to pollen grains? The similar thing some kind of cells do to sperm in the testes, in the seminiferous tubules. Go and find those cells. And let's stop here. At yes, someone I think got the answer. Iram, yes, Iram? Yeah?
Sertoli, sir.
Sertoli cells, perfect. Sertoli cells are where the sperm heads are embedded. And throughout, as they go through that wall of seminiferous tubule, they give them nourishment. They develop, they divide, and finally they become spermatids and then develop the tail through spermiogenesis. And then through spermiation, they are sent out from the seminiferous tubule into the retitestes, from where they go to epididymis. Don't forget these things, okay? Try to connect dots. Science will become easier for you. Okay? Right answer is Sertoli. Perfect. So we'll stop here for today.